Before I start this video, first I would like for you to take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. On today's video, I'm gonna take a different perspective. It's gonna be about Prince Andrew. I'm going to put myself in Prince Andrew's shoes when it comes to the Epstein case. This is not to say that I am in agreement with his action for sleeping with underage girls. For someone like Prince Andrew, who has 2 girls himself, he should know or have an idea of how it feels for grown men to take advantage of young girls. Hopefully he can wrap his head around this idea. So, when it comes to the Epstein case, yesterday's video, I showed you guys a segment that Rachel Maddow did about a Russian hotel that used to record some of its prominent guests. Foreigners or political opponents who were in somewhat an important position will be placed in rooms that had recording devices. They will record their action. This is how the Russian government was able to entrap their opponents and use their recording as a form of blackmail to take down their opponent. That part of the segment was a way to show you perhaps Epstein case might be another version of this kind of tactic, but in a grander scale version of that. Epstein used his island away from Russian soil to entrap foreign leaders. If it was in Russia, the people who are involved in the Epstein case will most likely not go to Russia to do what they did. In America's media, they always say that Epstein was a rich guy, but they had no idea where he got his money.
Well-connected financier Jeffrey Epstein is facing new sexual abuse charges almost a decade after cutting a plea deal for nearly identical accusations. Prosecutors accused the billionaire of recruiting dozens of girls to engage in sex acts between 2002 and 2005. Epstein is now being charged with sex trafficking of minors and sex trafficking conspiracy. So what can you tell us about him? He's a shadowy figure.
Yeah.
How did he make his money?
Gatsby. You know, I mean, it's like he loved to be around famous people. He loved to throw parties. He's very bright.
I
Apparently
like to be around famous people, and I like to throw parties,
well,
but I'm not a billionaire.
Nobody knew that. Nobody knew. Well, and no, where the money comes from, nobody knows.
But that's not the point of this video. I will insert this part of the video from yesterday at the end of this video, just to show you what I'm talking about. When it comes to Prince Andrew in regard to Epstein, if I were him, I would just go sit with the FBI and tell them whatever I know. Here's the thing. I think some of you may not agree with me here. When it comes to meeting people, majority of times you have no clue about the person's age, unless if you ask them. And then most likely you will take whatever they say at face value because they're saying it. How did he know the girls were underage? I'm just saying. If I were Prince Andrew, I would just speak with the FBI and say whatever I know. If he didn't know the age of the girls, just say that you didn't know. But here's the thing when it comes to this type of questioning. When it comes to child abuse in America, authorities take it very seriously. No matter how much talks and bribes that probably will take place to make this go away, no authorities will let that go. Most of these officials, American officials, have kids of their own. And some probably have grandkids themselves. They want to put a stop to this kind of practices. It will never go away for the royals. Epstein knew what he was doing, or the person who was in control of Epstein knew what he was doing. Epstein and Maxwell were middlemen or women in this case, in my humble opinion. There is someone who is above them, I believe. When it comes to the FBI, remember, they did raid Epstein Island. The FBI probably had a lot on everyone who visited Epstein Island. I think the second Epstein guests set foot on the island, they were being recorded. Every conversation that they had with anyone on the island was recorded. I'm just saying from afar. I know nothing about the case but what was recorded, and I'm just plugging things together just to have an idea for myself. On one of my videos, I said that the Andrew situation will be the Queen's legacy. I'll look for the thumbnails and show you guys, or put the link of that video in the description. If she thinks she could pay her son out of this mess, she is mistaken. Each person or investigator that is fired and replaced will continue the case. You know why? Because there were children involved. No sane investigators will allow grown men get away with what they did to children. That's one thing I give credit to American authorities. They don't take children's case lightly. They take it very seriously. No amount of money will make them turn a blind eye. Yes, there are some who would, which they did, but as you can see, it continues. But the sane ones who will not sell their soul for this. For the Queen, she should thank the country first. This Andrew Epstein case is bigger than what the Queen probably thinks. Race relation or the coronavirus that is at forefront, in my humble opinion, are just noises for bigger things to come. And guess what? The truth, the honesty, or the good will always prevail. It might take some time, but the good guys always win. So Prince Andrew better speak to the FBI and let them know what he knows. Okay, here's the portion of my yesterday's video about the Russian hotel. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Lawrence O'Donnell and Rachel Maddow are two American journalists who host their own TV shows. The reason I mention both in this video, although my point might come from one of them, or maybe both, I'm not sure, but it's some videos I saw back then. It's because one of them, like I said, or both, had interviewed a Russian musician called. The second point I want to make is about one of American journalists I've mentioned also did a segment about Russian hotel.
To get at that one tonight, weirdly, it might help to know that there used to be an official travel agency of the Soviet Union. Early on, Joseph Stalin created an official travel agency for the USSR. It was called Intourist. If you were a foreigner and you wanted to visit the young Soviet Union, you'd have to go through Intourist, and they would manage your trip. And I do mean manage. They managed hotels all over the Soviet Union, all these Intourist hotels. And if you wanted to come visit the Soviet Union as a foreign tourist or as a foreign business traveler, you would have to stay in one of these Intourist hotels. This whole Intourist system was set up by Stalin. And everybody who worked at these, lovely, very Soviet-looking hotels, they would keep an eye on you while you were having your Russian visit. They would keep a very, very, very close eye on you. Quote, the bellboys, drivers, cooks, and maids all worked for the NKVD, which was the secret police agency later known as the KGB. Also on the payroll at these hotels were the prostitutes who were deployed to entrap and blackmail visiting foreign politicians and businessmen. And these in-tourist hotels, they were all over the Soviet Union, and they all operated basically the same way. They'd be a normal, if somewhat terrifying and brutalist Soviet hotel experience for most visitors. But if some foreigner came through who was potentially influential in his or her home country, some decision maker who might be useful to the Soviet state at some point, well, then they would basically deploy their intelligence assets. They would deploy them to the foreigner's hotel room.
This clip must give you an idea of what probably happened to Prince Andrew, which is our current situation. Here's the segment that I'm talking about.
Started running a museum where they would show how the KGB would spy on people staying in special rooms in this hotel where potentially influential or important foreigners would be assigned to stay when they came to visit. The KGB would mount entrapment operations. They basically would set up all these foreigners to be blackmailed by the Soviet Union. Out of 400 plus rooms in this hotel in Estonia, the KGB had 60 of the rooms wired. They also had a monopoly on prostitution at the hotel. All of the prostitutes who they allowed to work at that hotel, all of them were KGB. And of course, now the KGB doesn't exist anymore. KGB became the FSB, which is 2 whole letters different than the KGB. Ultimately, the head of the FSB became this guy. And this guy got to be who he is now. This guy got to be president of Russia in a very KGB kind of way. And in the late 1990s, there was a powerful federal prosecutor who was looking into President Yeltsin, looking into other people in Yeltsin's government, looking into them for allegedly skimming off lots and lots of money into private foreign bank accounts. So this prosecutor's looking into high-level corruption in the new Russian presidency. And then, lo and behold, a grainy tape turns up that shows that federal prosecutor in a hotel bed with two very young-looking prostitutes. And maybe it's just a grainy tape, and who can say if that's really the prosecutor? But then the head of the FSB came out and publicly confirmed, yes, I hereby attest that is the prosecutor. That is definitely him. I'm the head of the KGB, the FSB, and I can hereby assure the public that this terrible person doing terrible things with these prostitutes in this terrible video filmed in this terrible hotel room, I can hereby tell you that is this terrible prosecutor, who incidentally has been looking into corruption by the president. And so because of that grainy tape, the prosecutor who was looking into Yeltsin lost his job. And President Yeltsin was very thankful, and he named yet another new prime minister.
The minor victims susceptible to sexual abuse. That abuse included sexualized massages during which the minor victim was fully or partially nude.
He named as his new prime minister the head of the FSB, Vladimir Putin, and that put a stop to the musical chairs at the top of the Russian government, and it's never started up again because Vladimir Putin has never given up power since.